Good evening and welcome to Insider. I'm Maayan Hoffman. Israel faces a critical moment with the ongoing war in Lebanon, and the U.S. remains Israel's most important partner in the fight against terrorism and extremism. With just 1 month into the U.S. election, tonight we turn our focus to November 5 and what it could mean for both Israel and America. In the midst of the war, we'll be debating which candidate, Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, provides or could provide the stronger leadership during these turbulent times. Joining me are two passionate experts, Heather Stone of American Democrats in Israel and Yigal Marcus, a board member of Republicans Overseas Israel. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
So I want to jump right in.
Thank you very much.
Yes, of course. So now Israel is entering Lebanon. We went in last night. The Biden administration called on Israel not to launch this ground campaign. Heather, do you think that Kamala Harris would react the same way?
Well, I'm not sure if Kamala Harris would react in exactly the same way, but I do believe that the role of the United States is to be a voice of dispassionate reason and to help Israel look for the long term and to be able to help Israel in going forward for options for the day after. So when President Biden says not to go in for a ground operations, his message is more to be looking for what will come after, and knowing that Israel is going to do what Israel is going to do.
So given that, Yigal, I want to turn to you. Do you think that President Donald Trump, if he were to be president again, would have done the same thing, would have spoken outwardly last night? Biden, in a question from a reporter, actually said, I'm looking forward to Israel stopping. Do you think that Trump would do the same thing?
I think Donald Trump, first of all, I don't think this war would have happened had President Trump been president. But the answer is no. President Trump has come out very, very clearly and said, Israel, do what you have to do. Finish the job. At the end of the day, we have a massive military army on Israel's northern border who can invade and do to our northern cities and towns what Hamas did down south. And he's willing to understand the reality. And I don't believe it's a long-term issue. The long-term issue is Abraham Accords. It's a prosperous Middle East. And the way you do that is by eliminating evil and eliminating the terrorist elements and weakening Iran to the point of where they don't have their proxies all over the place. And guess what? Then we can make peace. We can expand the Abraham Accords. We can create a great bridge between the East and the West.
It's the blessings and the curses that we saw Netanyahu speak about at the UN. I understand the nuance that you're saying there, but I want to talk a little bit then about military aid.
Sure.
Because the truth of the matter is we've been fighting this war for about 12 months. And I'm curious, Heather, Israel is not fighting just a war against Hezbollah. Israel is not fighting a war against Hamas. Israel is actually fighting a war right now on 7 different fronts. How would Kamala Harris maintain or increase the current levels of aid to Israel in the situation that we're in right now, if we were in a situation like we are now when she is president?
Kamala Harris has been instrumental in ensuring that Israel has received an enormous amount of aid. In fact, an outstanding amount of aid that an unprecedented amount.
Kamala Harris herself has actually done that, you're saying?
Kamala Harris has been instrumental in the amounts of aid that the United States has given to Israel. She helped get that aid over the line with pressure that she brought to bear on members of Congress and members of the Senate. And yes, she was instrumental in seeing it get over the line. Yes, well, she herself.
The power of the purse is controlled by Congress. Congress is controlled by, the House is controlled by Republicans, and the Senate is controlled, by Democrats, but it's razor thin. The reality is that sources around Kamala Harris have already floated the idea that she's going to withhold some critical aid to Israel as a way of pressuring them to do whatever it is that she wants to do. That's incredibly dangerous for Israel. Right now, it's published reports. Don't argue with me. It's a published report. They could be wrong or right. I don't know. That's what they're saying. And there have been multiple instances of where the Biden administration has slowed or stopped aid to Israel during an existential war for its survival, which I think is terrible. And to getting to a point that you mentioned before about going in and Biden being against going into the north, he was against going into Gaza. He was against going into Rafah. He was against going into Philadelphia quarter. Each one of them have proven victorious, enormous victory over Hamas. So forgive me for not exactly trusting his judgment, and certainly not the judgment of Kamala Harris when they say, don't go up north. It's worked until now. I think they have to continue to victory.
Now, Heather, I want to actually address something regarding the regional stability, because one of the things that
Can I respond? Can I respond?
Yes, go ahead. Go take 30 seconds and respond, and then I want to move back to the idea of this regional stability.
I mean, it's just it's Republican talking points that the administration has not stood by Israel. The administration has stood by Israel, including the standing by Israel and the assault by Iran on April 13th and 14th. And Israel has had no better friend than the United States and the Biden administration when President Biden came here during war and stood by Israel and has put military assets, including the naval assets in the Mediterranean. It is absolutely preposterous to say that the United States has not been the best friend for Israel.
Quote, those people outside have a point. And he's referring to Hamas, a pro-Hamas mob right outside the Democratic National Convention. Those people outside have a point. Tell me, how is that friendly to Israel?
So I'm going to stop the two of you right now, because I want to move into this question of regional stability, because in the end of the day, I mean, I think, Yigal, you started to allude to it, the idea of a prosperous Middle East is for us to form a peace agreement or a normalization agreement with Saudi Arabia, and for us to be able to work better with our neighbors, whether that is through war now and ceasefire later, or ceasefire now and war later. So I'm wondering, Yigal, and Heather, maybe you start. How would Kamala Harris navigate Israel's relationship with our regional neighbors? Do you see the opportunity for a peace agreement under Kamala Harris?
Yes, I think that Kamala Harris is always looking for expanding the Abraham Accords and the possibility to.
But how would she do it?
Well, I think that those opportunities will have to present themselves as things resolve with the war that's currently going on now in Israel.
She's had 3.5 years before the war. She had 3.5 years before the war. Nothing got accomplished. Abraham Accords are the exact same as when Donald Trump implemented them and formed them during his administration. So for the first 3 years, there's been zero progress before the war. Why would anything be any different in the coming years?
That is not true. Efforts were made to continue the Abraham Accords, and some steps were achieved towards that. And unfortunately, they were not able to be furthered with Saudi Arabia. But those steps are still moving forward. And in fact, they have not withdrawn their interest, even in the light of October 7th and what is happening.
Well, and I want to reiterate that because, Heather, I mean, when Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke at the UN just a week ago, he actually alluded to the fact that you're correct, that those steps are ongoing and that there is a possibility for a Saudi Arabia peace agreement. And there was an interview in some of the foreign press with a Saudi official who said that, in fact, perhaps the Palestinian issue was not the main issue and that there was a possibility for regional peace. Given that, I'm wondering if you can just very quickly in 30 seconds respond as to how you think it might be different if President Trump versus Kamala was elected into the White House in November.
Well, right now we have a very confused Middle East. We have a Middle East that Israel obviously is in the center of it, but the strength of the U.S.-Israel relationship is very much under pressure, and Israel has really, the U.S. has really been very tentative in that relationship. The way that you get things done in the Middle East is through strength. Peace through strength. And if you have strength, if America shows an absolute commitment to Israel, an absolute commitment to Israel's defense and not this, let's try to negotiate and stop the war and not do anything and let these other terror organizations kind of persist. The minute you do that, people are going to be like, you know what? I want to have peace with Israel because there's really no other option. Peace through strength, which is Donald Trump's way of managing international crises and international diplomatic relations, is key in the Middle East. As Bibi said, if you don't have a big stick in the Middle East, you're not going to survive very long. America and Israel combined together, showing strength, ultimately will deliver peace, because peace always comes through strength. When you don't have strength, it invites conflict.
So now we have seen, though, that over the last year, the International Court of Justice and the United Nations have attacked Israel unfairly over and over again. Heather, how have Biden and Harris demonstrated effective leadership in defending Israel in these international organizations, like, for example, the United Nations?
Well, the United States has stood by Israel repeatedly and has defended Israel in many of the votes that have come before the United Nations, and has brought up the hypocrisy of the United Nations in its efforts to condemn Israel. Just recently, the United States ambassador to the UN pointed out just how lopsided the condemnations of Israel are, in contrast to
Except, Heather, just last night,
like China and Russia.
But just last night, our U.S. ambassador to the United Nations actually said that we should also aim for a ceasefire right now, and that, in fact, we should not go into Lebanon. She was also very hesitant about this war. Does that make sense to you? Does that seem like it was the right thing to do yesterday when she was answering reporters at the United Nations?
Listen, the United States position, as I said, is not the position of Israel. It is the position for a long-range goals.
How is keeping Hezbollah in power a long-range goal? How is allowing Iran to have a huge proxy army on Israel's north border a long-range goal?
Yigal, their position is not to be is knowing that Israel is going to do what it's going to do, and yet America will stand by Israel and continues to provide armaments, continues to provide aid, continues to support Israel and to defend itself.
So
and
why not let Israel finish the job?
It is trying to convey the message that there will be a long-term goal of peace, and giving an opportunity and a horizon for the Lebanese people to be able to have peace, not Hezbollah.
So, Yigal, in your estimation, then, are you arguing that Donald Trump would actually do better than Biden and Harris? Because, I mean, I think Heather makes a good argument. What do you have to say to her?
I don't think it can get any worse when you allow a terrorist army to remain intact, which is what a ceasefire is going to do. That guarantees a future conflict. By destroying the enemy, which was...
And you believe that Israel is actually going to destroy Hezbollah in this war?
I think they're going to do enough damage to certainly deter Hezbollah and Iran for a very, very long time. We are literally pulling them apart piece by piece. But by calling for a ceasefire, what you're doing is you're inviting future conflict. What you're saying is, don't do anything, leave them there, allow Israel's northern citizens to come back under threat of imminent attack at any given point from Hezbollah, who have already said they want to do an October 7th massacre up north. How is that exactly? That's another example of weakness. We cannot allow our enemies to persist. That's something that Biden wants to allow. Sorry, and Donald Trump would have said it. He has said it, and when he becomes president, hopefully in a few months, he will say it again.
Donald Trump has said that he wants Israel to stop this war in order to fix its PR
No,
its
he
PR
said,
image.
finish
That's
the
what
war.
he said.
Finish
That's what
the
he
job.
said. Finish
no,
the
you're
war
wrong.
because it's
he said,
killing
finish the
its
job.
its
Do what
image.
you have to
That's
do
what he said. He
and
has
finish the
nothing
job.
to do with anything
Destroy
else.
the enemy.
Finish the
Finish
job.
the job.
He
Finish
said
the job
finish the
doesn't mean
war just
go
because
away.
it's
Okay, I want to go ahead.
Israel's
Let's pull it
image.
back in. Okay, both of you, let's pull it back in. How would Kamala Harris manage the U.S. relationship better than with Iran, which is, as we said, the head of this octopus here? Yigal, does Donald Trump's tougher stance on Israel give it an advantage? Heather, you start, and Yigal, you take it next.
Kamala Harris is determined to make sure that Iran and all of its proxies are treated with the greatest of greatest of sanctions by the United States as a terrorist state, and that it will have no safe harbor. Kamala Harris has no love for the IRGC.
Well,
None
the
whatsoever.
numbers show something completely different. The reality is, under Donald Trump, $4 billion of oil sales were allowed under certain exemptions from sanctions. Under the Biden administration, $50 billion, 50, a 681% increase in the amount of oil that he is allowing the Iranians to sell, which has completely funded Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, the Iraq militias. Is it really a surprise? This has been going on for years under the Biden administration. To be told now, oh, it's going to change, that she's going to stop them from getting a nuclear weapon. Can we really trust that? Look at the record. $4 billion per year under Donald Trump, which is a tiny, 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 tiny fraction of the GDP of Iran, or $50 billion per year. Huge amounts of cash flowing into that country. Are we really surprised?
We're going to run out of town here, so I want to jump into this question about anti-Semitism. We need to bring it back home also to the United States. Here, we're all American citizens. Anti-Semitism is raging in the United States. Yigal, do you believe that Donald Trump and his administration can tackle growing anti-Semitism? And Heather, why might Harris's approach be more effective? Yigal, 30 seconds, then Heather, you.
I think anti-Semitism has been caused by a fundamental problem, and it has to do with our leadership in America. When you have a leadership who look at people and they divide between the haves and the have-nots, and they covet what those who have, and they blame and they attribute success of some having been generated by at the expense of the have-nots. When you create and divide society like that, you're going to have anti-Semitism. It's happened every single time in history. So the first thing that has to happen is we have to encourage people to seek success by working hard and not looking at their right, their left, or who's in front of them. Aspire, dream, build. Not
Heather,
take what other people
now
have.
Heather's turn. Heather, go ahead, please.
Okay. Anti-Semitism is a scourge both on the left and on the right, on the extremes. And Kamala Harris has definitely recognized this. She encouraged her husband, second first Jewish second gentleman in the United States, to roll up his sleeves and get involved in creating a whole of government plan for combating anti-Semitism. And that program has been rolling out, and it is really helping to indeed combat anti-Semitism across the government, across the United States. And hopefully Kathy Manning's legislation that she has put forward to attack anti-Semitism will gain some legs and be adopted. And that would be quite helpful.
It hasn't worked.
Addressing this.
It hasn't worked. 91% increase in anti-Semitism, and that was until the end of 2023. It doesn't even include 2024. It has not worked.
Would work at this in a bipartisan manner instead of just saying out of hand it won't work.
Well,
okay,
you
so
stand in front of the DNC and you say those people outside have a point, and all they want to do is kill Jews and kill Israel, and you say those people outside have a point. That is not exactly solving anti-Semitism.
So I'm going to ask one more question question before we have to wrap up, and that is this. In general, there is actually a very high level of political polarization in America, not only the rise in anti-Semitism. Both candidates have actually been accused of extremism in their own ways. Can Kamala unite the country, Heather? And Yigal, do you think that Donald Trump is better or worse for the U.S. when it comes to American unity? Heather, you start. Yigal, you finish.
Yes, I think that Kamala Harris can be a president for all Americans. She can definitely address all Americans, from those who are in the lower class to the middle class to even our most wealthy. She has been able to work with everyone throughout her career. She has been a prosecutor, attorney general, and vice president of the United States. She has had but one client, the people of the United States, and she will always be looking out for the best interests of the United States.
Thank you. I'm going to have to stop you there because we are definitely going to run out of time. And Yigal, I want you to have the exact amount as Heather, so please respond to her.
3.5 years later, zero unity. When she references MAGA Republicans, MAGA Trump supporters in a condescending, disgusting kind of way, which she does pretty much on a daily basis, that's not unifying the country. Now, you're right, polarization is a very, very big problem, and I wish that both sides would be more reasonable. Certainly Donald Trump is taking enough bullets, literally, because of the polarization, because of the hate that's spread by the other side, and certainly by Main Street U.S. media. But we do need to get beyond this. We need to go back to the days of where we could civilly discuss our differences and try to solve our problems. And I'm hoping that, you know, with his legacy wanting to be success as president, that President Trump will deliver that and bring people together.
So that is all the time that unfortunately we have tonight, and our voters, mostly sitting here in the United States and in North America, are going to have to be able to weigh in on their own and make their decision, hopefully based on some of the discussion tonight. So thank you both, Heather and Yigal, for being here tonight. For more of the latest updates from Israel, make sure to subscribe to our newsletter at ILTV.tv. Thanks so much for watching Insider. See you next week.